האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening, Dober Vietcher. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Eikev. We're going to do Os Yud or Yud Aleph, so either section 10 or 11, and it depends on what sefer you have. In some volumes or in some sefarim, this is considered piece number 10, and others it's considered piece number 11. If you're following with the one that's on the screen, you'll see it's section 10, but whichever one you have, it should start with the words Brachot Perek Hey, Talmudic tractate Brachot, the 5th chapter. But before we begin the piece itself formally, let us take a look at two psukim from the Haftorah. This Zera Shimshon section talks about the Haftorah, and let's say a word about that. After Tisha B'Av, we know that there are 7 Shabbatot, 7 weeks in which the Haftorahs deal with consolation, consoling the Jewish people after the terrible tragedies of the 9th of Av. And they're called Sheva de Nechemta, or Shiva de Nechemta, the 7 readings that have to do with consolation. So this section, this piece in the Zera Shimshon, deals with the Haftorah that we're going to read, God willing, this Shabbos. And I'm going to read from there. This is Yeshaya, Perek Memtes, Psukim Yudalit and Tesva. Vatomer Tzion. And Tzion said, Azovani Hashem. Hashem has forsaken me. V'Hashem shechechoni, and Hashem has forgotten me. Hasish, that's the first pasuk. Next pasuk. Hasishkach isha ula. Can a woman possibly forget her baby? Merachem bin bitna. And can a woman forget to have compassion on the son of her womb, on her own child? Gam ele sishkachna. Also, these could forget. Ve'anochi lo eshkachech. And I will not forget you. So we're the straightforward, the pshat meaning of these psukim is that Tzion, Eretz Yisrael, Tzion, calls out that Hashem has forgotten and forsaken her. And Hashem answers, or the Navi, answers and says, is it possible for a woman to forget her baby, for a woman not to feel compassion for her child? Obviously not. And so too Hashem would never forget Tzion in the Jewish people, and so too Hashem would never cease from having compassion upon Tzion and the Jewish people. However, then the words are added, Gam eles ishkachna, even if these, meaning the women, perhaps in some situation, they could briefly forget and not have compassion on their children. Anochi lo eshkachech. The Navi attests to the fact Hashem says, I will not forget you, that will never happen. We'll see when we get into the Zera Shimshon that he's going to give us a different explanation from the Gemara in Maseches Brachos, reading a different meaning into these psukim, into these words. So here we go. Brachos Perek Hey. Brachos, the 5th Perek, 5th chapter. Amra lefonov. Tzion said, the Jewish people said in front of Hashem, Ribono shel olam, master of the world, hoil ve'ein shichicha lifnei kisei kivodcha, since there is no forgetting before, in front of your throne of glory, Shema lo tishkach li maaseh ha'egel. Perhaps you will never forget my involvement in the maaseh ha'egel, the incident of the golden calf. So the Jewish people are concerned, profoundly concerned. Hashem doesn't forget anything. And therefore, Hashem, the concern is that Hashem will never forget, never completely forget, and so to speak, delete from his memory in his recollection, the Maseh HaEgel, the terrible, terrible transgression of the Egel HaZahav, of the golden calf. Omar Lo, Hashem responded and said to the Jewish people, Gam ele tishkachna. Also, these I will forget, or will be forgotten. Meaning Hashem's answer, and of course, these are the words from the Pasuk in Yeshaya that the Gemara is, as we mentioned a moment ago, explaining in a different way, in a more non-literal way. Hashem says, I will forget the Maseh HaEgel. Now, there's a very interesting and important point to note here. The word Eile, which comes from the Pasuk, Gam Eile Tishkachna, which in the literal meaning meant these could also possibly forget. Women could possibly forget in certain circumstances, perhaps an emergency. They could forget their baby. They could forget their child. But Eila is a word that looms very large in the story of the Maseh HaEgel, of the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, because after it appeared, the people who wished to proclaim its appearance said, Eila Elohecha Yisrael, these are your gods, Israel. And so the word Eila here is Hashem, being used here as Hashem's way of indicating, yes, there can be forgetting of a forgetting of the sin of the Egel, in which the word Eila played a prominent role. Omru lefanov, so the Jewish people said back to Hashem, Hoil v'yeshichecha lifnei chisei kivodcha, since you've just told us that it is possible for there to be forgetting in front of your throne of glory, since you're saying you can forget the sin of the Egel, so that means you can forget. There can kavayochol be forgetting in front of Hashem. Shema tishkach limaseh Sinai. Then perhaps Hashem, you will forget the incident of Har Sinai. If you can forget the Egel HaZahav, perhaps, God forbid, you'll forget how the Jewish people came to Sinai and accepted the Torah, and that would be calamitous, catastrophic. Omar Lo, Hashem said to the Jewish people, Ve'anochi lo eshkachech. Again, the words from the Pasuk in Yeshaya, and I will not forget, meaning I will not forget Har Sinai, even though I just stated that I will forget the Egel HaZahav. I'll be willing to act as if I've forgotten the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, but I will not forget the revelation and the Kabbalah HaTorah, the acceptance of the Torah by the Jewish people at Har Sinai. Once again, there's a pivotal word here, Ve'anochi, and I. That word is in the Pasuk, and it's Chazal say that's Hashem's way of saying at Har Sinai, I said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God, and you accepted that, and you accepted the Aseres HaDibros, and you accepted the Torah, and I won't forget that. Tzorech Iyun, this passage in the Gemara in Maseches Brachos requires analysis. Ma inyan zeh la zeh. What does one thing have to do with another thing? Meaning, why is this anecdote pairing together the Egel HaZahav and the Kabbalah HaTorah at Har Sinai, as if Hashem forgets one, he has to forget the other? They're two very different incidents. One, of course, is a moment of the Jewish people's greatest glory, and the other is their moment of great shame. But they're not the same thing. So why are they paired together? That's question one. Velama nokat lifnei kisei kivodcha. And why does the Gemara use the language of forgetting in front of your throne of glory? The Gemara doesn't use the simpler language of, since there is forgetting in front of you? Why is Hashem's throne of glory mentioned here in this passage in the Gemara when it could have easily and more simply stated that the Jewish people were concerned about shichecha lefanecha, about their being forgetting in front of Hashem? Either they were concerned that there might not be forgetting of the Egel HaZohav, and once they were relieved to hear that there could be forgetting of that, then they were concerned that there might be, perhaps could be forgetting of Kabbalas HaTorah at Har Sinai. That's the second question. Why the unusual language and mention of Kisei, Hashem's Kisei HaKavod, Hashem's throne of glory? Next paragraph. V'yuvan Shapir. And this can be understood nicely or correctly, b'mai de'isa b'shmos Rabbah, with something that is stated in the Medrash Rabbah on Shmos, Parsha Shmos, on Parsha Shmos, u'parshas Kisisa, and it's also stated on Parshas Kisisa, shekishenigla HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when Hashem, the Medrash Rabbah states that when Hashem appeared al Har Sinai, top of the next column, in Kisei Kivodo, with his throne of glory, v'hachayos hanosim oso, and the chayos, which are angelic beings, were carrying the throne of glory. This means that according to Chazal, at Har Sinai, the Jewish people merited to have, they were zocha, they merited to have a prophetic vision in which they saw an image of Hashem's Kisei HaKavod and the Chayos, the angelic beings that were carrying it. Haim hisbonenu bo, they gazed at the Kisei HaKavod of Hashem, the throne of glory of Hashem that they merited to see a glimpse of. V'shamtu echad mehem, and they selected one of the things that they saw. We'll talk about that in a moment. Kedichsiv, as the pasuk in Yecheskel says, ufenei shor mehasmol, and there was the face of an ox from the left side. V'hichisu oso bo, and they angered Hashem with that image of the shore of the ox. Let's pause for a moment. In the beginning of Sefer Yecheskel, Yecheskel Hanavi describes a vision that he had, which Chazal refer to as Maisa HaMerkava, the vision or the episode of the chariot. And Yecheskel describes this prophetic vision of seeing Hashem's Kisei HaKavod, his throne of glory, with angelic beings and images, which we know from Chazal are impossible to understand and explain literally, and in trying to explain them figuratively or symbolically, they go beyond normal human understanding also. However, in that description in the first chapter, in the first parak of Sefer Yecheskel, it says that there were four faces or images, one of a man, one of an ox, one of a lion, and one of an eagle. And I'm sorry if I didn't state the order correctly. But the face of the ox, the Medrash says, the Jewish people saw that at Har Sinai, and some of them grabbed onto that experience of seeing the ox, and they used that to say that they wanted to have an Egel HaZohav. They wanted to have that image as a type of being that could lead them when Moshe didn't come down as expected from Har Sinai. And this, of course, angered Hashem very profoundly. V'zehu she'omar lo leMoshe, back to the text. And this is what Hashem said to Moshe. Now we're going back to Parsha Shmos, and the episode of the sneh haboer bo'esh ve'einenu ukal, the burning bush that was not consumed by fire. So during that incident, Hashem said, Ra'o ra'isi, I have surely seen, a double language, I have surely seen the suffering of my people. And Chazal teach us that Hashem wasn't just talking about doubly seeing the terrible suffering of Bnei Yisrael in Mitzrayim in servitude and in slavery, but rather he was talking about the future. And Hashem was saying to Moshe, Ata ro'eh re'iyah echad. You see in the future one vision, namely, Moshe, you see the vision and you aspire and hope for one vision, and that is taking the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim and bringing them to Har Sinai to accept the Torah. That's your one vision. However, va'ani ro'eh shtei re'iyos. I see two visions. That's what it means, ra'o ra'isi. I have certainly seen, Hashem says, I see two visions in the future, one of Har Sinai and one of the Chet HaEgel, one of the sin of the golden calf. So Hashem foresaw both of those things and linked them together. Next paragraph. Umeata hadavar mevoar. And now that we have read, have understood that statement in the Medrash Rabbah and Parsha Shmos, now everything becomes clear. She'im yishkach maseh ha'egel, going back to the Gemara in Maseches Brachos that this piece started with, if Hashem were to act as if he could forget the incident of the golden calf, tzarech sheyishkach nami, then he would also need to forget. This is the reasoning of the Jewish people that explains their concern that the Gemara is describing. If Hashem forgets the Masa Egel, then Hashem could also forget Mashe Shamtu Tzurashur Mehamer Kava. Then Hashem might also forget how they selected the face of the ox, the form of the ox, from the vision of Hashem's chariot and his throne of glory, Me'osa Mamad, from that standing at Har Sinai, that moment at Har Sinai. Being Canaan, if so, if Hashem forgets the Egel HaZohav, and therefore also forgets how the whole Egel idea and concept came from the Jewish people's glimpse of the Kisei HaKavod of Hashem and the Maisa HaMerkava as described by the Navi Yechezkel, in Cain, if so, Hoyisi Omer, then I might say, Sheyishkach Nami Maseh Sinai, then Hashem could forget how the Jewish people came and accepted the Torah at Har Sinai. Dahainu Kabbalas HaTorah Shehoya Ba'oso Mamad, which was the receiving of the Torah at that same moment, at that same standing at Har Sinai. V'kal lohavin, and now it's easy to understand why the Gemara and Brachos put the two episodes together. It tied together the episode of the Egel Hazav and Har Sinai, and also it answers why the Gemara used the language of Yesh shichacho lifnei kisei kivodcha, there is forgetting in front of your throne of glory, because the throne of glory is the key to the whole concern. That is why it's because of the throne of glory and the image of the ox that the Jewish people used to envision the Egel HaZohav. That is why they were concerned that if Hashem wiped out his memory, so to speak, Kaviyachol, of the Egel Hazav, of the golden calf, he might also need to wipe out his memory of the Kabbalas HaTorah, of the Jewish people accepting the Torah at Har Sinai. God forbid. And so we understand the pairing of the two things, because there's a connection between the two things, between Kabbalas HaTorah and the Egel HaZohav, which we would not have known about without this excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah on Parsha Shmos that the Zera Shimshon brought in the middle paragraph here, in the second paragraph, but now we understand how everything fits together. So it goes without saying that that the terrible, now that we're 2 Shabbosim past the terrible tragedies that we recall on Tisha B'Av, we realize that Hashem, of course, has not forgotten and never will forget, nor has Hashem forsaken, nor never will forsake the Jewish people. And no matter what transgressions, even the Egel Hazav, no matter which transgressions Hashem passes over and puts out of his memory, he will not ever forget and pass over the memory of Kabbalas HaTorah at Har Sinai. And this gives us all the more reason to strengthen our commitment to Torah and to the study of Torah and the observance of mitzvos. Yasher Koach for joining in the learning of the Zera Shimshon this week. And we look forward, Be'ezus Hashem, God willing, to learning together in the Zera Shimshon on next week's Parsha.